All right, thank you guys for coming to today's weather briefing. We have Tyler Royce from AccuWeather going to be talking about some European severe weather, and I think the forecast for here as well for the next few days.
Yes, thanks for having me. I'll first discuss the all-important weekend weather coming up, and then we'll dive into European severe weather and also the return of winter to Europe. Um, That'll come in the second half. Right now, just checking out current satellite over the last several hours. Just nice sunny skies out there. Seeing some clouds start to develop over central Pennsylvania. Last night I was over out in Penn Valley and coming home at 8 o'clock. And it was really cool because if you're driving along on 45 towards State College, you're right on the edge of the clouds. So on the north side up here is somewhat like this right now, but on the south side towards 322 and towards Mount Tussey, it's all overcast. Bless you. And that was really cool. But right now, just clear conditions, going to remain like that for much of today. Just looking at the temperatures, I don't say nice contrast, but if you go up into the Finger Lakes up in New York, you're stuck in the upper 40s, but here we're already 63. Go down to DC around 70. In a nice, everyone essentially in Pennsylvania is in either around near 60, except for Erie with the wind off the waters. We're all in the 60s, so it's going to be another nice day. There was a stat, I forgot who found this stat. I think it was Dr. Niche tweeted this out last week, and I found it very interesting. Prior to last week's dry stretch, we haven't had a dry stretch like that, at least 3 or 4 days, without measurable precip in over 7 weeks. So think about it. Much of March into February into April, we had at least we didn't have a stretch of at least 3 days where we had a dry period. It was always dry, rain, or something of the sort of dry, rain, dry, rain. So that is very interesting. And now we've had this very prolonged stretch to where the only time we really saw precipitation, oddly enough, was Saturday and Sunday. And we were dry once again. Checking out the latest, should I get this right? 500 millibar pattern. Essentially, we have this nice ridge just off the western coast of Europe, the Isles. We have trough in the east. In Eastern Europe, we have this big area of troughiness up in Canada, and then once again we have a nice ridge up into Alaska and into the part of the Arctic Circle. Then we also have a nice trough off the west coast of the West Pacific, or the Pacific, I should say. And that's essentially the pattern we've kind of been in. This ridge out here in the Atlantic has kind of been holding firm over the last couple of weeks, and when you think it's finally going to be beaten down, it redevelops, and it keeps shoving the storm track from Quebec all the way up into Scandinavia. This system here in Eastern Europe, Central Eastern Europe, snuck in because high pressure was redeveloping off the western coast, and it dove down into Germany, providing them for a wet Easter. So we'll go through current forecast. Essentially what we have, essentially going to be high pressure all the way up in Quebec into the Atlantic Canada, and it's leading into tomorrow. It's going to provide a nice easterly flow all the way through southern New England, the mid-Atlantic, and all the way essentially back up to here. And that's pretty nice, if I read that correctly, strong high pressure system doing that. So it's going to be, after these nice stretch of weather we had, it's going to be very crummy Boston to New York City, and sadly even back to here for a period. That in turn will shove the storm system that's moving through the upper plains up into Quebec province going forward, which in turn the trailing cold front will move through here Thursday. On Thursday with some rain, but fear not, it looks like it's going to quickly transition to a warm front as we have a storm system moving into the Great Lakes. Sadly, when it's going to be warm, it's probably going to be raining here, or to be showery or whatnot. Wouldn't rule out a rumble of thunder. When we think we're not going to, we somehow end up. I think we saw that last month. That happened. And then finally, the all important as we head into, actually before that, it does look like it's going to be wet. I believe Go Gadgets were at Old Main Thursday evening. That looks like it could be wet. But as we head into Blue White Weekend, that storm system finally departs. It's probably going to be more on the more seasonable side for this time of year. But we do have to watch for the storm system that's going to be down in the lower Mississippi into the Tennessee Valley as the trough in the plain starts to dig to the east. I do know as of yesterday there was talk of how it was yesterday. This weekend could be either nice, or at least Saturday would be nice, and then we go over into a wet period, or if the Europeans right, we're going to be socked in with rain. It's going to be in the 40s. And the last time we had wet weather like that, at least rain, we have to go back at least to 2012 for that blue-white game, which was actually canceled after the first half. That day it was just pouring rain here. Maybe it wasn't 2012, it was 2011, because that was the same day that North Carolina was dealing with its tornado outbreak. And if we fast forward, that was the weekend, or at least the week and a half before the infamous April 2027 outbreak down in Alabama in the Deep South. Right now, I think it's probably fair to say that the GFS at this point is moving rain in, so it's not like it's totally going to be dry and the European's totally wet. It's more or less the GFS is just bringing the rain in later, so we're dealing with a timing issue. Most likely rain will probably be coming in probably towards the end of the game, if not in the early evening hours. Temperatures probably will be in the 50s. If we do hold off the rain long enough, we could probably end up into the lower 60s, but that rain moves through. Funny thing is, I believe on Saturday, it was the GFS as we go out from here, was forecasting a snowstorm early next week. Some of my coworkers were poking fun at that solution, but it does look like we could be having maybe a last push of winter trying to move through, at least a little brief cool snap. But if you're going to the game, make sure you have sunscreen at least, or have a hat and glasses, especially sitting on the east side. From years of experience, also make sure you have your raincoat, or can't really bring an umbrella because it could start raining near the end of the game. So that's all I have with the local forecast. Any questions? All right, we're going to jump over, and I'm going to quickly talk about severe weather over in Europe. Which might actually not bring up the database. Severe weather in general is about, in some regards, 50 to 60 years behind the United States. In terms of tornadoes, that's the lag time it is over in Europe. If you talk about other phenomena like wind, hail, flooding, avalanches, lightning, that stuff is more on par to where we probably are right now. There's a group called the European Severe Storms Laboratory that's based in Wiener Neustadt, Austria, which is southwest of Vienna, on the southeastern slopes of the Alps. In reality, it's somewhat where that tornado icon actually is, where Wiener Neustadt is. This here is the severe weather database. It is very much like the SPC in how they report, but in my opinion, this is a much friendlier, and I gush about this database, because if I was to click on, oh, that doesn't help me. If I was to click on this Northeast Italy tornado, which there's footage of happening over the weekend, I get details from it. I can zoom in, I can, if I narrow the date range, I can zoom in, I can go to this article and whatnot. So it's very interactive. I can actually click and see, okay, there's what that report is. It happened at this time, at this date, this is what the comments are. As you know, with the SPC, you actually just have to look at the list. And you could do that here as well, but here it's very interactive. Now, the sad part is not all the European countries want to interact with one another when it comes to this. For instance, we really don't get a lot of reports of a lot of weather out of Eastern Europe. Especially if you're a war-torn country like Ukraine, or not really war-torn, but you have corruption or you have issues going on like in Romania, Bulgaria, Belarus, or the Baltic states. Or it could be like Spain, which has their own and just refuses to cooperate with any people and have their own database, which really doesn't help if you're trying to do research, you're trying to get an idea of where all these reports happened. So the Severe Storms Laboratory put out over the last year, they went and they looked and did some pretty interesting maps showing how many injuries were associated with severe weather last year. 685. A lot of that looks like comes from wind. Those are the no, that doesn't help. Comes from wind. All the white dots in the Alps, essentially avalanches. Sadly, I thought avalanche season would be over with. It is sadly not. And then if we click further on, they can break down further. Oh, that doesn't help. You also have lightning, which was 30% of the injuries. Severe wind was 33%, and whatnot. The next one that comes from is how many fatalities there were in 2016, and it was 217. A lot of that does come from lightning. So to go along with, yeah, we kind of know how to forecast the severe weather. It's the severe weather preparedness that is still lagging, that a lot of people still do not comprehend, especially with lightning. Just to go to show you how many lightning deaths, especially in Eastern Europe, there was. I believe also there was a couple where people did get injured from lightning in Germany or in France. I think they made the headlines because it was soccer games were going on. I think one of them was in Paris where was youth soccer was going on, and lightning struck and injured a whole bunch of kids. The other aspect is flooding, flash flooding, as you see in Greece, you see in Paris. The Paris flash flooding was back in June. They had some very heavy rain that started up in southwestern Germany, which are these two, and kind of rotated to Paris. And if you remember during the French Open, there was major river flooding going on at the same time. So that's what essentially caused that. Hail is more of the biggest severe weather phenomenon in Europe. All you need is some kind of cold air loft with an upper low, and you can get hail very easily there. This goes to show you that there are close to 2,800 reports of hail. Now, granted, a lot of them do come around from the Moscow area, but hail does happen. And it tends to be, could be as large as it is in here in the United States. And when it does hail, it's not this pinky dink like, oh, there's a hail ball there, hail ball there. It's like, it looks like it snowed and they need to take the excavators out to clear the roads. The other aspect is wind, almost 8,000 reports. A lot of that comes from wintertime, not necessarily from thunderstorms either. So we're always reporting severe weather with that. A lot of that comes from, you can just see Western and Western Central Europe, not necessarily in Eastern Europe, but that's where the big areas of wind are. That's where you typically see some of the strongest wind storms. Just only 600, just over 600 tornadoes, and that's a lot of that is dealing with water spouts. As I said, we're still lagging behind in tornado technology, tornado forecasting in Europe. A lot of that is because a lot of the same ingredients that we see here for big outbreaks in the plains and in the deep south don't happen in Europe. And a lot of times it's a lot of these weak EF0s, EF1 tornadoes that are popping up. Your facts for the day that you can go tell your friends, or you could save for Jeopardy or whatnot, is the UK. And it's not the United States. The UK has the most tornadoes in the world by area. By area. Why? Well, the United Kingdom is that much smaller. A lot of those don't come from your typical supercells. They come from your squall lines, which are these brief spin-ups that last maybe half a mile at most, and then they quickly dissipate. They're never warned for in the UK because they don't have such warnings. They're very uncomfortable. A lot of European countries are very uncomfortable with issuing tornado warnings. Only very few. I think Germany is probably about the only one who actually issues tornado warnings. Now, granted, that doesn't mean people stops people from chasing and whatnot. If the weather weenies out there know that there's a threat for tornadoes, trust me, they are ready to go, and we'll see footage if there is. And it just isn't the summer months. It's typically, let's say, we're now spring, summer, and fall. The United Kingdom, for instance, they have 2 tornado seasons. One's in the summer and it wanes down and it fires back up in the fall. That's just because that's when they typically get their squall lines to come through. And so that's all I have with that. I will say the European Severe Storms Laboratory does provide forecasts very much like the SPC does for the day one. It is very old school per se, if you want to call it that, where you have level 1, 2, and 3, and then you kind of have to go down and they list what is going on. But it gives an idea of what's going on, because I said the conditions that we typically see in the United States aren't always going to be the same over in Europe. You have a lot more terrain to play with. You have a lot more water, especially in Western Europe. Treat it very much like you're in the West Pacific. You got a lot of Atlantic influence, or even sometimes Mediterranean influence. Lastly, I'll end with, as I said earlier, winter has somehow decided to come back and roar and pay back Europe for their nice warmth that they've had at the beginning of the month. The warmest temperature so far this year is in the United Kingdom is 78 in London. They're lucky if they get to that several days in a row in the summertime. If London hits 80, that's like us hitting 90. It struggles. Once again, a lot of Atlantic influence. But what we have this conglomerate of low pressure. You have one that's off the northwestern coast of Italy, and you have a weakening low pressure around Slovakia here. If I can get this. This here is the one that's developing, going to take over, but what it's doing is drawing a lot of cold air in from northwestern Russia. It's just funneling in. Those who woke up in like Lithuania on Easter, they had snow on the ground. It wasn't just the dusting, it was several inches. And unlike here, there's a lot of leaves already out, have already come out in Germany, Czech Republic, Slovakia. And as we go forward, this is the 0, let's see how good the 12 season. Go forward, a lot of this rain will change with snow this evening, and we're going to have a lot of the thunderstorms that kind of developed over in northeastern Italy will kind of move across, become this big blob of heavy rain, move across some of the interior Balkans, but we're dealing with areas of snow. That's what the purple is. That's where it can definitely really accumulate, not really on the roads, but mainly on the grassy surfaces and on the trees, and that could be leading to two damage from trees and damage to trees. On the flip side, we also have another storm system bringing snow to parts of Ukraine. So it's not necessarily damage from trees and to trees that could be an issue. It could also be an issue of crops. Because we've been so warm, the crops already have started to probably be slightly ahead of normal, and now this cold snap is really could really damage the crops. There's already been issues of having to ration lettuce and other vegetables because of a colder than normal, according to the Spanish, winter, which damaged the crops. This could lead to further issues this summer. The storm system in the Balkans will stick around, give areas snow, and finally weaken by Thursday or by Friday. It will be not as big as it once was. And so you're going to be probably hearing stuff in the news of snow leading to issues over in Europe. And that's all I got. Any questions?
How much snow are you talking?
In the lower valleys, 1 to 3 inches. If you're in the Alps, the ski resorts are probably like rejoicing because they get to stay in business. But that just prolongs in the Alps, that just means probably in certain areas on the northern side, like on the slopes going in Germany, that wouldn't be shocked to see 1 to 2 feet in the higher terrain. But that just means it's prolonging the avalanche season, which has already been deadly in Italy, in the Alps, in the Pyrenees already this year.
Any other questions for Tyler? All right, thank you, Tyler.
You're welcome.
Next week we have Rich Grum with the last brief